Okay, the very first thing that we're going to do is we are going to measure our quilt top. And this one particular measures 41 inches by 37.5 inches. Now this is my sample showing you how to put together the back for your quilts. This is not a normal quilt top. Normally you would want it to be longer rather than wider. We always want our quilt back to be 3 inches bigger. And one of the ways that we know how to do that is by knowing what we're starting with. So right here on this quilt, this bolt, it tells you 42 inches. So somewhere, 100% cotton, somewhere on the bolt when you're purchasing your fabric, it's going to tell you what the inches are. So we know that this is 42 inches wide. So if my quilt top is 41 inches, then it cannot be 3 inches bigger on each side. So we will open up our quilt fabric to the length that we need. So in other words, and this is just a sample fabric I'm using to show you how to do this. In other words, this is going to be my quilt back. And my quilt back is going to measure 45 inches long. So if my quilt top is 37, then it is going to be approximately 3 inches longer and 3 inches on the top. So this one is actually 5 inches. I'm going to trim that a little bit, but you want it to be 3 inches longer on top and 3 inches on bottom. Now, my problem here is going to be the width. This is not wide enough. Now, standard quilts are going to run either throw size, which are 60 by 70, so 60 inches long, or 98 inches long, or 102 inches long. So that means we have to have it 3 inches on each side. So if I had a 60-inch quilt top, it would have to be 66 inches, 3 inches on this side and 3 inches on this side. How do you put together a quilt top or a quilt back if your fabric is only 42 inches wide for a 90-inch or a 60-inch quilt top? So we talked about this in class, but this is what we would call the selvage. It always has these little color coded here for your fabrics. Sometimes it'll have a label on it, but it always has this weird finished edge. It doesn't have a stretch in it. This is the straight, or this is your selvage. You're always going to sew on the selvage. You're going to cut another piece of fabric the same length. Okay, so when you purchase your fabric on the bolt, it's going to tell you how many inches it is. So this particular one says it's 42 inches. It'll be 60 inches, 90 inches, or 108 inches. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut the length of your quilt, not the width, but the length. And you want the length to be going up and down. This is the fold on the bolt. The correct way to make your back bigger, if your width is not wide enough, is to take the fabric right off the bolt, the fold. Make sure that your pattern is matching up and down your nap. If it's fleece or minky, you want it to be going the same direction. And then at the fold, you're going to cut right down the center. And the correct way is to take the straight and add it on the sides, evenly on both sides. Now you can just add it to one side, but when you go to put it on, it's going to have a seam in a weird place. So the next thing you're going to do, once you've cut it in half at the length and you have the straight, means no stretch, you are going to do right sides to right sides. And you're going to sew straight down the seam. And when you open it, you have attached on one side. You're going to do the same thing for the other side. Now, if you're using fleece, because you can use fleece or minky, remember that most fleece comes 60 inches wide. So if your quilt is only 48 inches, you don't need to do anything. If your quilt is 66 inches, then you're going to have to add. You can add exactly the same way. Remember that fleece is really stretchy and so is minky, but it's only stretchy one way. It's only stretchy the width. It is never stretchy on the straight. So when you sew on the straight, you're going to zigzag. You're not going to use a straight stitch. And the reason why is because a straight stitch, when you pull it, it's going to snap. But on a zigzag, when you pull it, it's going to make it tighter. And you want to do evenly on both sides. Let's say you have a 60-inch piece of fabric, but you only need 70. You're going to cut 5 inches and 5 inches and make it wider. Do it evenly on both sides. Once you've sewn the two seams together, for instance, and you have zigzagged your seam, then you're going to go back and you're going to trim all this bulk out of it. Make sure you zigzag, small zigzag stitch, not a large one, and you can connect your seams. You can do the same thing with minky. Now, remember that when you put your quilt top on, you want it to be 3 inches longer all the way around. So 3 inches on the bottom, 3 inches on the top, 3 inches on the side, on each side of your, then you are ready to send your quilt to the quilter. So I hope that answered all your questions. Send me a message if you have any more questions and send me a photo of your quilt. I hope you ladies are getting them done. Okay.